What was the most unpleasant perk you were offered at work? Story 1. They signed a deal with a gas station chain. Employees would get a certain amount off on gasoline diesel. This was paraded out with a full company meeting and everything. The price reduction was less than normal customers that got a card with that gas station chain. So they had spent months working out a deal that was worse than what anyone could get by signing up at the gas station chain's website. Story 2. Once worked at a place where the benefit was free access to the company gym, which was just a treadmill in a dark, windowless basement room. No thanks. I'll pee on the dungeon workout. Story 3. I started a bar job and the people who were supposed to take over from my shift quit. So I worked 3 shifts in a row my first day. After working 23 hours, my boss said he'd give me a bottle of liquor as a thank you. He gave me a half bottle. Story 4. When I worked at a local mental health facility, they had a crazy high turnover issue across the board, but particularly with clinical staff. One of their solutions for the morale issue was to throw an employee appreciation fair. Free food, games, music, the works. The first problem was they expected the support staff to set up and man everything. Maintenance constructing the booths, IT setting up and managing the sound system, kitchen staff doing all the cooking. So not only did I was IT, not get to enjoy the event, we ended up a full day behind on our normal tasks as well. The other problem, the big problem though, was that any of the staff that interacted with patients, particularly the clinical staff they were having trouble retaining, couldn't cancel those appointments to attend. So the event just ended up being administrative staff and the office pool having a big party for themselves, while the rest of us either served them or heard the festivities coming from outside while they were stuck inside doing actual work. As you may imagine, it did not have the intended effect, but the C-suite liked it so much, it became an annual event. Story 5. I told our HR person we were losing employees because of low pay. I showed examples of similar jobs that were paying 25% more at other firms. She told me that the casual work atmosphere was a huge benefit and should be taken into account. My response was that I could buy a lot of neckties for $10K a year. I resigned a few weeks later and they tried to counteroffer. Story 6. I was working at a shop and was actively pursuing a job as a teacher, which was not a surprise to anybody. I got the job with the underrating that when I finished my degree, I'd be pursuing a teaching job. I needed to come in late one day due to an interview. Literally just needed to be an hour late. Boss said, "Go ahead and take an extra 15. I thought he was being nice. Turns out dipping below 7 hours was what he needed to deny me a lunch break that day. Story 7. A few years ago, I interviewed with a nonprofit, and when asked my salary expectation, I said about a 10K raise from where I was at the time, which was also within their listed range, so I thought it was reasonable. I was working for the state at the time, and since salaries are open, the hiring manager was able to find out what I make. She offered me a salary 1K more than what I was making, and on top of that, I'd lose the state pension and have to pay for health care out of pocket. She told me in our last meeting that she knew how much I made and I should just be grateful for getting a raise at all. In the same time frame, I got a 30% pay cut. Everyone did across the board. I interviewed with another company who I'd done projects with prior and knew pretty well. The manager offered me exactly what I'd been making before the cut. I'd told him about it in confidence because I knew and trusted him. He told me, with the pay cut, this should feel like a raise. I've happily been with another company that made me a great offer and has consistently shown up with great raises and promotions for 3 years. Story 8. Worked crazy OT for a month to get vital computer security updates done. Every computer had to be touched individually. Those of us who were salaried were promised we would be taken care of for the 20+ hours of overtime each week. Hourly people earned time and a half. Salaried people got a company-embroidered baseball cap as a thank you. Oh, and so did the hourly people. Story 9. I made it to the 5-year mark, working a laborious job for little pay after 08 recession. You're lucky to have a job phase. They acknowledged my milestone with a $5 Starbucks gift card. At that point, why bother? And I can't count how many thanks for working the holidays again. There is pizza in the break room. BTW. No pizza left by the time I was able to make it. Story 10. It wasn't the benefit itself, it was how it was presented. I worked for a company that repaired and sold out used electronics equipment. I was one of the guys in the warehouse sorting, wrapping, and even sometimes helping repair the equipment. Our CEO was almost never there. When he was, he'd roll up in his Mive pickup and act like he was everyone's best friend. None of us liked him. Anyway, one Christmas he announced early that he had a special surprise for all of us in the warehouse, that we'd all be getting a Christmas bonus. Christmas Eve, he shows up and has everyone gather round. He then makes a speech about how valuable we all are, then makes a Mive show of opening his wallet and giving each of us $100 from it. The whole time he had this self-satisfied smile on his face like he was some sort of super benevolent ruler giving bread to the peasants. I was happy enough for the money, but the situation had such a smug, masturbatory quality to it. Story 11. For Teacher Appreciation Week, the school gave us a gift card to Chick-fil-A to be redeemed for a free breakfast sandwich. Also, it could only be used at one specific Chick-fil-A near work, and it had an expiration date. A coupon. That's called a coupon. They also fired me a few weeks later, which was honestly a much better gift, because that's school. Story 12. They got a food truck to come out and park behind the building for us. They didn't pay for any of the food or consult us on the type of food we wanted. So basically, the benefit was you can pay for your lunch if you happen to like this food, but they hyped it up as some grand gesture. Story 13. So, I work at a nursing home. We aren't allowed to accept gifts from the residents, which I'm completely fine with, but they have it practically posted everywhere for the residents to donate to the workers for our holiday bonus, which gets taxed. And most higher-ups don't interact with the residents, let alone the employees actually working. Story 14. I interviewed with a place earlier in the year that walked me around the facility, including their employee dining room, and the guy said, enthusiastically, "We're right next to the employee dining room, so there's never any reason to leave the office for lunch." The office and dining room were in the basement. Zero sun or windows all day, every day. What a bonus that I can grab my lunch and bring it right back to my desk for more work. Story 15. We got fake company dollar bills for good work, or going above and beyond that we could save and spend for one time, use perks, like an extra break, some a company shirt or hat, or a vending machine snack maybe. The highest one was a pizza. And if you and your work crew put all yours together, it could be a pizza party. Well, me and my guys pooled ours together and ordered 3 of the most expensive pizzas we could every time we had enough bucks. They changed the rule after that to a $20 lunch that you needed a receipt and they would reimburse your lunch. Story 16. I was in my mid-30s at a large nonprofit and HR made us complete a questionnaire like, "What's your favorite color? What's your favorite candy?" And we were told this would inform the way they would reward us. I just wrote money as my favorite everything. Pay me in money, please. What am I, 5? Story 17. Company I worked for made a big song and dance about how we were being given health insurance. We only had to pay about £20 a month in taxes, or a contribution, I forget how it worked, for the benefit. You may have noticed the flaw in their logic based on the currency symbol I used. Yep, this was in the UK. I'm already paying for my nationalized healthcare through tax. Private healthcare does not interest me in any way, and actually having to pay for it would be a joke, especially considering it was more than my contribution in tax for healthcare. They were shocked when I signed out of it and didn't blindly accept it and pay for it like all the other employees. Story 18. I worked at a McDonald's in high school. We were allowed to buy food on our breaks for 50% discount, but only food for you. So no bringing dinner home for the family or whatever at 50%. If there was anything left over at the end of breakfast, the end of the night, we had to write it down in the logbook and throw it in the trash. If someone wanted to take it home or save it for their break, they had to pay for it. Story 19. My org gave out benchmark service awards. Usually they're trophy GL with a name and length of service. When I hit 5 years, they gave me an org-branded plastic travel mug, the same mugs we give out as promos to people at events. It was presented to me in a paper bag, all dolled up with decorative paper. The bag was worth more than my award. There were clear plastic garbage bins outside the venue the party took place at. I threw my mug in there. Everyone who attended, including the CEO who presented it to me, had to look at it on the way out of the venue. On Story 20. I worked on a team that would force us to have a pizza party like every month or every other month, but nobody wanted to pay for it. It wasn't covered in the company's budget, like there was no extraneous fun money to treat us, but they kept making us have it. So it usually ended up being up in the air as to who would pay for it. Our team lead, who I'm assuming was responsible for mandating the party, made no attempts to hide his irritation at covering it the few times he did. I don't know who paid the other times or why we kept having them if it was such a sore spot. It wasn't the type of company where the president would have given enough of A to force him to do it. I was the lowest paid and the only PT team member with no benefits, and recognized all of the resentment around it, so I didn't even eat anything. I didn't feel comfortable eating. This same team insisted we go out to lunch to welcome me as a new employee, but when the check came, it sat awkwardly on the table for a few minutes before my manager made a big reluctant show of standing up to retrieve it. It was extremely awkward and uncomfortable. I have no clue why employers force these things if there isn't team-building fun money allotted in the budget. It just makes managers, directors resentful and the atmosphere strained, so nobody has any fun. Story 21. I went into HR and told them I'd found another job that was hybrid remote from home, 2 days in the office a week, and that I was going to take it to benefit my studies from home, but said I don't want to switch companies if it can be avoided. Their counteroffer was giving me contractual benefit of 1 uninterrupted hour per week to study, and they were proud to offer me that. I handed in my notice immediately. Story 22. I was in a division, and one of the units in the division had reached a milestone in a big project. It had been a lot of work, and there was lots of congratulations given. The top bosses decided to have a little thank you party, and cakes were purchased, but we were advised that we had to bring our own coffee. Story 23. I work at a large production facility. Sometimes the managers are gracious enough to put unsellable product in the break room, like the crumbs of the almond bark I make, literally penny-sized crumbs that are too small to be packaged. There were 4 paper bowls, 1 on each table for all 100+ employees. So generous. Story. 24 hours for a new job. Ed up my hire and benefits eligibility dates and were refusing to fix it, saying that it was locked into the system and uneditable. After much back and forth and me digging my heels in, they smugly called me with an offer. They would give me the first portion of my signing bonus early, a signing bonus that I was already getting, but instead of waiting for 90 days for the first installment, they would pay it immediately. I still had to wait for the rest of the installments on the regular schedule, over 2 years. They literally tried to bribe me with my own money. I told them that wasn't necessary, as if I left I would have to repay it, and if we couldn't fix the issue, I wasn't interested in staying. 2 days later, it was magically fixed and the bonus bribe was rescinded. I'm still there for now, but it doesn't feel like a long-term position. I should get my first bonus check soon though, LOL. Story 25. Nothing insulting. It's always been something or nothing. My current employer gives a holiday gift. All employees got a $500 bonus, and then there is an additional bonus for degrees in professional licensing. So I ended up with $3,500 bonus and a golf umbrella with the company logo. My previous job in the field did nothing, and then took away vendor swag and gifts. Like the cookies and meat trays vendors dropped off for the holidays, they just trashed them rather than let employees enjoy them. Story 26. 2 sick days per year. We were told that it wasn't a big deal because if there was a legitimate need for time off due to health reasons, we could use vacation. The most senior person there had 2 weeks of vacation/year. This was a family-owned firm where the managing partner and his bird son, the lowest, youngest, and most worthless person in the office, would get in each other's ears and come up with these tough guy solutions to non-existent problems. In any given week, at least one of them would be out sick with a tummy ache or lack of sleep or some other nonsense. The new policy didn't change that. Story 27. All of our staff got vouchers for local supermarkets. The sum was €40. Well, it was Christmas, and I'm not complaining. It was a present after all. Problem was that the vouchers were empty. Someone forgot to charge them. I found out while being at the cash register with a lot of people behind me. Story 28. My friend worked at Amazon where they were very proactive at recommending her their official employment firm. Because all the staff were contractors, it was heavily implied that you needed to pay the firm to ensure you were on the right side of the tax authority. So a benefit was immediately paying your wages to someone else to keep yourself out of trouble. Story 29. I have an odd one. I was insulted because I did not get a benefit. A manager once proposed to incentivize employees who weren't doing their job properly with rewards. I cracked the S and asked if they could just be fired instead, and people like me who were working unpaid overtime could get those perks. You'd think I just pissed in the manager's coffee cup by saying that. God, I'm glad I no longer work in that show of a company. Story 30. The freedom to choose when I take my paid vacation days. Manager said, the law says we need to give you 10 of them. There's nothing about who picks them or when. So we could give you a random Tuesday and Thursday in February and the other 7 days scattered throughout November. There was a union drive happening at the time of this comment, and I'm convinced management wanted the union to come in and tie their hands a bit. It would have made dealing with corporate easier for them. Story 31. I once worked on an assembly line in a factory. Big factory. Easily took 15-20 minutes to walk from my end of it to the front of the building where corporate was. That's an important detail here. So one time they asked us all to pull a lot of overtime for a few weeks to catch up on some promised production numbers they oversold or some BS. As a thank you, they announced they were going to bring in some ice cream trucks for us all to get free ice cream. They brought the trucks to the end of the building near the offices. Our break wasn't long enough to get to the ice cream and get back to work on time. Only the suits got free ice cream. So, in summary, to thank the production workers for doing extra hours, they bragged to us that the desk job guys who caused the trouble in the first place got free ice cream and we didn't. That one pissed me off. Another time they asked us to work over the night before Christmas Eve. It should have been a shutdown day. They promised everyone a free lunch for giving up our holiday time. 12 and 1/2 hour shift and no food ever showed up. They forgot and we were all starving. The next shift, when everyone was there, we were told not to say a word about it publicly or we'd be fired. Anyway, I learned 2 lessons from that job. 1, never trust your boss when they promise you free food. Bring a backup meal just in case. 2, never agree to get paid in stock. At my level, it will never be worth more than the salary they'll probably ask me to give up for it, and it makes taxes hell. I spent 2 years working there. I won't say their name, but they build electric cars in Fremont, CA, and their owner is a South African who recently purchased Twitter and the White House. Other fun stories are the times a guy lost a foot getting run over by a forklift, a guy getting electrocuted to death, numerous fires in the paint department, multiple CL action lawsuits for making us doctor out time cards, and so many other messed up things. But the ice cream thing, that is the one that still really makes my blood boil almost 8 years later. Story 32. Worked at an Amazon warehouse, and management told us we were the most efficient warehouse in the entire national system during peak on some metric, and will be getting a prize soon. In February, someone writes on the suggestion board asking what that prize is going to be. They reply, "It's on its way now." The prize was that one of our Kiva bots that delivers the shelves to our workstations will be autographed by Jeff Bezos. He never actually came to our warehouse, so they probably printed a sticker and put it on one of the machines. So every once in a while, we will get to see the Great One's signature on the robot that delivers us tasks. Story 33. They kept increasing my end-of-year bonus calculation factor. Problem was, the company never met its financial goals to trigger an end-of-year bonus, or so they said, because the goal trigger algorithm was kept secret. "You did such a great job this year, we're doubling your bonus factor." Turns out anything multiplied by 0 is still 0. Story 34. Parking reimbursement. To get them, employees had to collect the parking tickets, then send them to finance. If employees didn't send their tickets before the due date each month, they would be ineligible for the reimbursement. The kicker? It's only a third of the parking fee for the month. Story 35. I started at a job delivering furniture. I was technically part-time, but I signed a waiver to allow me to work full-time hours. During the second week of January, I was made full-time. A year later, we were getting profit-sharing checks. Full-time workers got $2,500. My check was $200. I was told that I hadn't been full-time for the entire calendar year, so I was only eligible for part-time profit sharing. I was not happy. The next day, the manager took me aside and said he understood I was upset. He handed me a sealed envelope and told me not to tell anyone. I took the envelope to my car and found 2 $20 gift cards for a meat shop. I quit the next week. Story 36. Unlimited PTO. The company does this because #1, when they fire you, they don't have to pay out banked vacation days in #2 because people take off less time when they don't have a fixed amount of days to utilize, and the people who usually take off an amount that seems outside the norm are usually the first to go when the cuts start happening. Story 37. I was just added to the deferred compensation plan. I'm not vested for 7 years. It's a fraction of what the last guy who stole from the company got, and they confirmed that I will be a one-man department in a few months. I work at a 24/7 establishment that relies on the IT infrastructure, and I am already putting in 6 days a week with the one other person I have. During the conversation, we talked about what would happen if I left or was unable to work. That's when the CEO admitted they'd pay someone new well above what they pay me. Guess who's willing to take a pay cut to get out of there? Story 38. The sales plan bonus. I work somewhere regular staff are only hired part-time. You need to be at least a supervisor, but preferably management to be full-time. If we outsell our sales plan for the day, a small amount of that bonus amount is split up amongst us based on our contributes hours, meaning that part-time workers will see at most an extra 20 C an hour for busting, but most typically if they get anything, it's more like 12 C per hour for a few hours of the shift, while management makes multiple dollars an hour extra for a few of the hours of the shift. It's more of an insult than an incentive. Story 39. A piece of fruit once a week was a particular highlight of one place. Another reminded us regularly of their generous pension scheme, but ignored all of my emails asking to be enrolled in it. The second company was stunned when I left for a better job, and I took special delight in telling them that the key thing that made me decide to leave was access to the retirement benefits. Story 41. Christmas. My employer gave everybody $10 gift cards for the company cafeteria. The thing was, the cafeteria was overpriced, nearly inedible slop, and everybody knew they were just doing it because nobody used the cafeteria anymore, and got their lunches from places like DoorDash, so the cafeteria was hemorrhaging money. Then if that wasn't insulting enough, they gave us the gift cards 2 days before Christmas, then shut down the cafeteria for good January 6th. So the vast majority of employees couldn't have used their gift cards, even if they wanted to, because they were on vacation and not even in the office during that period. Story 41, rewards points. Staples, terrible company, used to offer sales associates rewards points for pushing some of its most profitable and predatory products and services. $70 PC diagnostics, extremely overpriced warranty plans, marked up USB drives, etc. And if you exceeded your expected minimum quota for selling this garbage, you received points. These points could be used on a janky rewards site. You could get gift cards on the site, but they were so ridiculously overvalued in the point system as to be entirely not worth it. I worked there for 3 years and they did away with this system shortly before I left. When they were doing away with the system, I had never used any of my points, and I had to use them or lose them. 2+ years of points got me a food dehydrator that retailed on Amazon for $1.20. It broke after the 3rd time I used it. Story 42. This entire thread reminds me of why I don't participate in any office functions of any kind or accept any fringe benefits. No Halloween, no Christmas gift exchange, no special events, no attendance of annual appreciation breakfasts, nothing. The excuse I give is I just don't enjoy those things and have too much work. While that is true, the actual reason I retain in my own head, and never say because it might get me fired, is parties do no pay my bills. Story 43. I remember I worked for this business years ago that sent out an all-staff email about how they were going to have this big picnic to celebrate our hard work in the summer. I had worked there on a contract basis but had been there for 3 years and they kept extending our contracts. And we had the understanding that our positions would likely become permanent. Then a few weeks later, they sent another email about how the picnic email was sent in error and was only supposed to go to permanent, full-time employees, and U.S. people on contracts weren't invited. Considering this applied to about half the staff, there was a bit of outrage over that, and they eventually decided that they would allow everyone to come in the end. But it was just so offensive that you dangled permanent employment over hundreds of people's heads for years and then had the audacity to try to uninvite them to company events because you refused to hire them on full-time and permanent. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, as shockingly, none of us got hired on permanently, and we were all laid off and me a few months later. And this was after I'd applied to about a dozen permanent positions they had open, where they'd interviewed a bunch of us and then decided not to fill the position with anyone because I guess none of us were qualified enough to do the work we'd already been doing for them for months. Story 44, a multi-acre green space with walking paths and whatnot that you were not allowed to use or you would be fired. But you could look out the window during lunch or before or after work and enjoy regular public using the space, but not during normal working hours. You aren't paid to look out the window. And yes, people got fired while I was there for walking on the GR. Story 45, kombucha on tap that hadn't been replaced in months. Also free mages, though the company didn't hire a muse, so it was just a mage table in a dark room. Finally worked at a country club, and 1 day a year for 2 hours total, an employee could swim in the pool the day the pool closed for the season, and the water was nasty, uncleaned, and about to be drained. Come on all. You get the benefit of swimming in rich people's filth for a few hours. That's a great benefit. Story 46. Not nearly the most insulting, but holiday gifts at my company have become very ridiculous. Years ago, they would give everyone a $100 physical prepaid credit card. Cool, very nice, and pretty helpful in the holiday season. This is a very successful global corporation, so they can certainly afford to do this, and more, honestly. Well, maybe 5 years back, they reduced it to $50. A bit insulting, but it is whatever. The $100 was not funding my retirement, so cutting it in half was not putting me out on the street either. Last year, they signed up with some online vendor where our company would upload points to every employee's account, and we could use those points to choose from a variety of vendors and obtain a $50 gift card from those vendors. On the surface, no big deal. Some added variety was there now. We all quickly received emails indicating that due to this new system, the $50 would be counted as taxable income and would show up on our pay stubs. So again, successful global corporation usually raking in the dough worldwide. For years, gave a small gift to all employees equal to $100 USD. Some bean counter somewhere has now shifted this program to where employees are basically getting $37 USD as a holiday thank you after taxes. I can't even buy a jelly of the month club annual subscription for that. Story 47. This year is my 5th year anniversary working for a company. It's a big company making gazillions of profit. Around the time of my actual anniversary date, I received an email from the CEO. Yep, it's an automated form letter congratulating me. Fine. In that email, I was offered an anniversary gift. There was a link in the email to the web page where I can choose my gift. I was shocked that the gifts were completely random. Cheap items like a strainer, hand cream, a mug, a case for goalies. It's as though someone had leftover items lying around, and those were the gifts. I priced out a few items, and they were about $20. It's embarrassing for them, and they should stop offering these gifts. I told some people at work about it, and we all got a laugh. Story 48. I've got a few. I worked at a startup for a few months that offered a bunch of benefits like free breakfast, mage therapy, free dinner at fancy restaurants, gym peas, stuff like that. The owner also thought it was super cool that they had kinetic sand for us to play with too. The breakfast was kids' cereal from Costco, and we had to bring our own milk. The mage therapy and restaurant peas were due to work he had done on trade for them, and none of us, except him and his fiancée, got to use them. One department head tried to ask for the restaurant gift card to take his parents and GF to celebrate a milestone and kept getting look into it and get back to you for months until he dropped it. I got the same runaround with mage therapy and gym access. Then one day we were getting something out of the company car and found a huge stack of gym peas in the center console, all of which had either the owner's fiance's names written on them, so no one else could use them. That company, and several others he started, now no longer exist and have tons of negative reviews on how he took their money and never delivered. Another place I worked severely gutted their commission structure for employees. It used to be you got a flat percentage for every sale. Then they gave a minimum goal to even start getting commission. Fine, whatever, that's not uncommon. But then they replaced it entirely with this tiered system where you started at a low percent, but the more you sold, the higher percent you got. Sounds pretty good, right? Lots of potential to make more money? Well, it was now a weekly sales goal to make a biweekly goal. For example, your biweekly goal was $2,000 and you get 10%, but you had to sell $1,000 each week or you got nothing. You could be sick one week and sell nothing, then sell $5,000 the next week, but they wouldn't count that as meeting your goal, so you get absolutely nothing. And those higher percentages, you only got access to them once you had consistently hit your goals for a period of time. Interestingly enough, this didn't go over well with the staff. Who would have thought employees who earn tips and have commission would know how to do basic math? Sales started dropping since the staff knew it wasn't worth selling the second week if they hadn't sold enough the first week, so they wouldn't bother. When our new manager went to the owners to discuss this and see how we could change the system back or find a way to offer them true incentives, they gave her candy bars to give as prizes for hitting your sales goals. Same place decided to do trades with some local businesses for gift cards to give to clients. As a prize for selling the most gift cards one year, I got one of these other cards instead of a money bonus that had been hinted at. It was to an extremely expensive bathing suit store nearby. I was given a $50 card and half of a bathing suit started at $100 and went up from there. I spent $25 on a pair of sunglasses that started peeling a week later and never used the rest of it. Story 49. I had a job offer for a slightly higher up position that came in $20K, less than I was making per year. I told them this with proof, and they came back at me a week later with their best offer, which came up $2K, and then told me I was too self-centered for them anyways, after I told them I would be staying put at my current job for the much better pay. Story 50. I used to work for a joint manufacturing company that recently started up in the US to the tune of billions of dollars. Two of the largest automakers in the world, and one of the companies being one of the most profitable in the world. During Employee Appreciation Week each day, they appreciated us with something new. Monday was a card saying how good our work had been during startup with a blow-pop sucker. Tuesday was a free 12 ounces fountain drink from the cafeteria. I don't remember the rest of the days because it was also I stopped bothering waiting in the lines during lunch to get the gift. Story 51, I worked at a company with an arcade room, ping pong tables, free snacks, gym, steam room, Finnish sauna, free soda pop. However, you could use these at any time, but there were accountants that would walk around and ask if you hit your production commitment that day. If you didn't, they would tell your boss and you'd go back to your desk to finish. The thing is, your commitment was almost impossible to hit by 5 p.m., so no one ever had the ability to use any of the benefits. The free snacks and pop weren't free and could only be bought with quality points, which were points given for ping an audit or given from your boss. Audits only happened once a month, and my boss handed them out once a year, and each snack or pop cost like 5 quality points. Lastly, you could lose quality points from a bad audit or literally anything. There was a POS cunt that we worked with who would get pissed if anyone used those points, as she never got any. or was able to use any benefits and would tell on us for random made-up. She did it to one girl, and that girl punched her in the face and obviously got fired. Same girl told HR about a guy with 3 kids. He was a top guy in the company and would finish early and ahead of everyone. Super nice dad and great guy. She told them that he was yolly-hairing her and he got fired. This guy left the building and took a baseball bat to her car, cut the doors off with a grinder, used the grinder on the interior and poured syrup in her gas tank. When I got a new job and put my 2 weeks in, I just clocked in and went straight to the arcade and played games. An accountant came by and told me I had to go finish. I told him no and just to fire me. He was pissed, and then more people joined me, and soon 25% of the company was using the benefits and not going back to work. They couldn't fire that many people. So it happened for last 2 weeks until I left. They tried to threaten me and another guy with security, but I'm an abnormally large human, and the other guy was 6'10", just a mive mother air. And when security came, he just said, "No, come back with more people, you'll need it." LOL, they didn't come back until the end of the day on my last day. Last I heard, they had exodus 3 months later and had to let people use the benefits or they were leaving, and a good 40% left in 2 weeks. Story 52. The very small company I worked for was a good company, but we were underpaid for the job. The company got bought out by a multi-billion-dollar company, and we were all promised compensating raises. 3 months down the line, when the deal became official, they offered me a 0.64% raise. When I rightfully let them know they were for this, they really wrote up a whole report and tried to justify it by showing me that it was really a 3% raise because if I max out my 401k contribution, then there would be an additional 2.5% that they would be matching, so it would be just like getting over 3%. I've never laughed so hard in someone's face in my life. I was gone the next week. Story 53. A software house just big enough so individual workers didn't mean anything anymore. They had a software package release party, which was mandatory. I told I had been fighting with alcoholism in the past and didn't feel like I wanted to participate. Had to go. Was told you don't have to drink. It was a loud music and free booze and not much else kind of an event. A tier person would have just gotten blackout drunk and then go back to have a problem with alcohol. Story 54. A long time ago, I worked for a tech outsourcing firm. The manager would walk around and hand out the regular paychecks personally. Direct deposit wasn't a thing for them for whatever reason. When the manager handed over the check, they said something along the lines that this is a benefit to me for my hard work. These were the standard payroll checks, not a bonus. It always felt super degrading that the basic payroll transaction was twisted into a perk for working there. I didn't work there for very long. I felt a super sense of joy when walking out for the last time. Story 55. Driving the boss 60 miles to downtown LA in rush hour traffic on a Monday morning so he could attend a weekly meeting. It was sold to us as a benefit, as we would have those hours driving to talk to the boss. Oh, and we started 2 hours early for this privilege. I did it once, and on return to the office, submitted a claim for overtime, but a premium sort of overtime, rather than our standard overtime. This caused a kerfuffle in the office with my supervisor, and once the overtime was approved, my co-workers liked me, but management hated me. Story 56. Special gym membership as part of our benefits. It only costs $60 a month to go to the same Planet Fitness I already have a membership at for less than half the cost, but it can be used at any in-network gym nationwide. So if I was someone that traveled a lot for work like the top 3 executives at the company do, it might be worth it. Story 57. During residency, the hospital and program heads would throw big holiday parties. We always in pretty decent spots. Often open bar. They were for the residents. The problem was they never got coverage for any residents, neither day of or day after. So most people couldn't go because they had to cover their shifts in the hospital. And the ones that had lighter shifts that week could go, but would need to be at the hospital by 6 the next day. So most didn't. The parties ended up mostly for the admins, who year after year thought the residents weren't interested and were pissy that the admin tried so hard but nobody showed up. Story 58. Maybe not a benefit per se, but a thing nonetheless. A long time ago, because I'm old, I used to work with a company with an office staff who would manage a tech staff who worked outside the office, mostly in the elements, which could really suck. New England. So during the holidays, vendors would drop off some pretty nice swag as well as treats like gift baskets, food, etc. You probably know where this is going. The office staff would decimate the swag and gifts, leaving nothing for the tech staff, basically saying, if you snooze, you lose, all while enjoying the heat and cover the office provided. The tech staff would get in after a day in the weather and get the dregs, if anything. Always bothered me. Story 59. Not me, but my husband gets a free wellness day, which costs him 8 hours of PTO. When he signed up for the company-organized volunteer work, painting houses, he was instructed to use his PTO or mental health day for the missed time. Needless to say, many people backed out of the volunteer work. Story 60, unlimited PTO. Worked at my company for 7 years. I was earning about 3.5 weeks of PTO until they presented us with unlimited PTO as an awesome benefit for us. Used to just plug in my PTO dates on our company calendar, but now I need to get approval. I basically have to detail why I'm taking PTO and if I think it is a good time to be absent at my job, like WTF. Oh, and I'm averaging about 2 weeks of PTO since the change to unlimited PTO because my company now has the authority to freeze PTO if they think things are getting too busy. Story 61. We get yearly employee appreciation. Last year, everyone got random gifts. From the vendors we buy from, random anywhere from Trucker Hera goofballs, mugs, water bottles, most likely left in a closet that the higher-ups didn't want. Also, we now get a Christmas gift of $100 every year, taxes and deductible on top of that, so typically $80 give or take. Story 62. A job I applied for had the last 2 weeks of the year off, listed as a benefit. No other vacation time from what it looked like. They considered it extremely generous. 2 whole weeks at the most requested time of the year. You won't even have to stress about it. Except that I don't care about the holiday season, Christmas. And even if I did, it's literally the worst and most expensive time of the year to travel, whether to visit family or to have a fun vacation. Every job I've had since 2011 has offered me way more than just 2 weeks off a year. And yes, this is in the US. The policy they thought was very generous and stress-free would be a major annoyance to me. I still applied thinking if I got that job, I would just keep it while I found one with a better vacation policy. I ended up getting rejected 2 hours later. Story 63. My last job gave us $8 to spend at the cafeteria if we stayed after 6 p.m. Most entrees were $9, and sides brought the bill closer to $15. Not to mention that when we checked out, the cashiers sometimes made a point to tell us how well we're being treated and that we're lucky we get a whole $8 credit. Seems like the company was just treating everyone poorly if the cashiers considered that so lucky. And Story 64. One U.S. company prided itself on giving Jewish holidays off. This was a huge benefit for them. However, most of their employees weren't Jewish, so the fact that our number of days off varied widely every year due to the Jewish calendar and that PPL had to use already limited PTO when their kids were out of school because we didn't get all bank holidays made this not as huge a benefit as the company seemed to think. Story 65. At a job in the early 2000s, we had a 2-to-1 match on our 403B up to 5%, 10% match. If I put on 3%, they'd put in 6%. If I put in 5%, they'd put in 10%. If I put in 6%, they'd still put in 10%, capped at 10% match. One day, they changed it. They decided to put in 6% for everybody, no matter if you contributed or not, but that was their max. In the meeting to announce this, I suggested in front of hundreds that this was a pay cut for many and not the benefit they painted it out to be. Yet they insisted it was better. I said, no, it's not. I currently put in 10% and you put in 10% for a total of 20%. If I keep mine at 10%, you put in 6% for a total of 16%. So you are telling me that I am getting a 4% pay cut and that it's better. I get that you have to cut costs, but don't paint this as better when it's a direct 4% cut in my benefits. They stared at me for a few seconds and thought I was dumb. They said, but no, you see, you don't have to contribute anything to get the 6% now. We just give it to you. If you put in 0%, we still give you 6%, whereas in the past, if you put in 0%, you'd have gotten a 0% match, I replied. But I will never put 0% in. I plan on keeping my contribution to at least 10%. So this is a pay cut. I got a blank stare. They moved on. And then, oddly, I had a stream of 7, 10 others at my organization come to my office to explain, as they also thought it was better the new way. Turns out people are dumb about money. Story 66. A large company I worked for once had a Christmas party. This company was making big dollar. The meal was catered in, and it was obvious that it was all pre-cooked and reheated food. I've had TV dinners that were better. After the meal, they gave us all gifts with the company's logo. We all got LED flashlights and a miniature multi-tool knife. When researched online, both items totaled around $3 when buying 50 or more. There were around 50 employees. The food ran out after only 30 people went through the line.